In the vast, star-strewn expanse of the Zerathia Empire, where nebulae swirled like lovers' whispers and planets pulsed with ancient secrets, there existed a ritual that struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest warriors from across the galaxies. It was called the Trial Night Terror, a nightmarish gauntlet overseen by the enigmatic Queen of Shadows herself, a being of ethereal beauty and terrifying power. No one had ever emerged from her clutches unchanged, let alone alive. Legends whispered of her as a force of pure psychic energy, capable of delving into the deepest recesses of a mind, unraveling it thread by thread until nothing remained but shattered echoes of sanity. Thousands had tried, hulking warriors from Orvian, sleek assassins from Lunara, even the stoic guardians of Xandor, and all had crumbled, their screams echoing through the void as warnings to the unwise. But then came Ali, a rugged Earth pilot with a devilish grin and a knack for turning chaos into comedy. He wasn't seeking glory, hell, he hadn't even meant to be there. His ship, the battered old Starhawk, had malfunctioned during a routine cargo run, spitting him out into Zerathian space like an unwelcome guest at a cosmic party. Captured by patrolling drones, he was thrust into the Empire's grand arena on the shimmering world of Oralis, where the air hummed with electric tension and the crowds of alien spectators buzzed like a hive of luminescent insects. They saw him as fodder, a puny human toy for their queen's amusement. Little did they know, this unassuming man with his tousled dark hair and piercing blue eyes carried the unbreakable spirit of humanity, adaptable, irreverent, and utterly fearless in the face of the absurd. As the twin moons of Oralis aligned in the velvet sky, casting an otherworldly glow over the obsidian spires of the palace, the ritual began. Ili was led through corridors lined with holographic tapestries depicting fallen challengers, their faces frozen in eternal agony. The guards, towering figures with iridescent scales and glowing eyes, shoved him toward a massive chamber that pulsed with an unnatural darkness. "You will face her," one growled in a voice like grinding stones. "And you will break like all before you." Ili chuckled, rubbing his stubbled chin. "Break, buddy, I've survived worse than a bad date. Let's see what this queen's got." The crowd's murmurs grew into a roar as he stepped into the void, the doors sealing behind him with a finality that would have chilled most souls. But Ali? He whistled a jaunty tune from an old Earth rock band, his heart pounding not with fear, but with that peculiar human thrill of diving headfirst into the unknown. Deep within the chamber, the shadows coalesced into form. She emerged like a dream woven from starlight and silk, Lyra, the Queen of Shadows. Her hair cascaded in waves of purest white, framing a face of porcelain skin that seemed to glow from within. Pointed ears, delicate as elven whispers, peeked through her tresses, and her body was a masterpiece of curves. Clad in a gown of translucent fabric that hugged her form like a lover's embrace, shimmering with embedded gems that caught the faint light and turned it into fire. Her eyes, twin voids of swirling indigo, locked onto him, probing, invading. She was no mere woman, she was a psychic entity, born from the Empire's ancient experiments, a guardian of minds who tested the worthy and devoured the weak. "You dare enter my domain, mortal?" Her voice echoed in his head, a sultry melody laced with venom, wrapping around his thoughts like velvet chains. The air grew thick, heavy with illusions that began to twist reality, visions of his worst fears materializing, endless voids swallowing his ship, loved ones from Earth crumbling to dust, his own body unraveling into nothingness. Ili staggered for a moment, the weight of her power pressing down like a black hole's gravity. But then, something sparked in him, that indomitable human spark. Instead of screaming, he laughed, a deep, genuine belly laugh that echoed off the chamber walls. "Whoa, lady, if this is your idea of foreplay, you've got some explaining to do. I mean, I've had nightmares, but this is like a bad acid trip mixed with a horror flick marathon." Lyra's form flickered, surprise rippling through her psychic aura. No one had ever responded like this. Challengers begged, fought, or fled into madness, but this human, he mocked her terrors. She delved deeper, summoning phantasms of monstrous creatures lunging from the shadows, their claws raking at his flesh in illusions so vivid they drew real blood. Yet Ali dodged with surprising agility, his pilot's reflexes kicking in. "Hey, easy there, if you wanted to dance. You could have just asked." He spun away from a spectral beast, pretending to waltz with an invisible partner. "See, 2 left feet, but I make it work." The humor wasn't just deflection, it was his shield, a way to reframe the horror into something manageable, something human. As her attacks intensified, he countered not with brute force, but with wit, turning a vision of drowning in space into a joke about skinny dipping in zero gravity, transforming a horde of nightmarish insects into a quip about Earth's worst picnics. Lyra's curiosity ignited. Who was this creature that bent her nightmares into jest? She manifested closer, her gauzy dress whispering against the floor as she circled him. Up close, her scent was intoxicating, like blooming night flowers on a distant world, mixed with the ozone of a thunderstorm. "You do not fear me," she murmured, her voice now a caress in his mind. "Why?" He met her gaze, his smile unwavering despite the sweat beading on his brow. "Fear. Sure, a little, but life's too short for that crap. Back home, we humans turn our fears into stories, laughs, even love songs makes the universe less scary." He extended a hand, bold as brass. "Name's Illy. What's yours, gorgeous?" For the first time in eons, Lyra hesitated. Her empire revered her as untouchable, a destroyer. Yet here was this earthling, treating her like a person, a woman. The shadows around them softened, her power ebbing as intrigue took hold. She reached out, her slender fingers brushing his, sending sparks of psychic energy dancing along his skin. It was electric, intimate, a connection that transcended words. As the night deepened, the trial evolved from terror to something far more profound. Illy's humor chipped away at her defenses, revealing glimpses of the lonely entity beneath the queen's facade. She had been created to test, to break, but never to bond. Now, with this human's light-hearted defiance, cracks formed in her eternal isolation. They talked, well, he talked, and she listened, her laughter starting as a faint echo in his mind, growing into something real, melodic. By the midpoint of the night, the chamber no longer felt like a prison. Illusions shifted from horrors to wonders, swirling galaxies where they danced weightless, phantom feasts of exotic foods that tasted of forgotten dreams. Illy shared tales of Earth, sunsets over oceans, the chaos of city streets, the simple joy of a cold beer after a long flight. Lyra, in turn, revealed fragments of her existence, the burden of her power, the emptiness of ruling through fear. Their proximity grew charged. Her hand lingered on his arm, her body leaning closer, the fabric of her gown teasing against his flight suit. "You make me feel alive," she confessed, her voice a whisper that stirred something deep within him. Illy's heart raced, not from fear now, but from the undeniable pull between them, a magnetic attraction born in the heart of darkness. As dawn's first light crept toward the horizon, Illy realized this wasn't just survival, it was conquest of a different kind. He had turned the trial night terror into a night of revelation, where terror gave way to tenderness. And Lyra, she was no longer just the queen of shadows. In his eyes, she was a woman, captivating and vulnerable, ready to step into the light with him. The Empire watched in stunned silence as the chamber doors opened. Illy emerged, unscathed, his arm linked with Lyra's. But it was his grin, that wide, triumphant smile, that sent shockwaves through the crowd. For the first time, the queen walked beside a challenger, her white hair catching the morning sun, her pointed ears twitching with newfound amusement. Whispers spread like wildfire. A human had not only survived but had won her heart. Yet, as they stepped into the grand hall, Illy felt a subtle shift in her touch, a hint of something unspoken, a shadow lingering in her eyes. The trial might be over, but their story was just beginning, fraught with dangers and desires that could reshape the stars themselves. The grand hall of Orali's palace stretched out before them like a cathedral forged from starlight and obsidian, its vaulted ceilings alive with holographic constellations that shifted in hypnotic patterns. Illy's hand remained entwined with Lyra's as they crossed the threshold, the cool silk of her skin sending subtle thrills up his arm, a reminder that what had transpired in the chamber was no mere illusion. The crowd, a sea of alien faces with elongated features, glowing markings, and eyes that burned with a mix of awe and disbelief, parted like waves before a storm. Whispers rippled through the assembly, growing into a low hum that vibrated the air, charged with the electricity of scandal. No one had ever seen the Queen of Shadows emerge like this, arm in arm with a challenger, let alone a human from the fringes of known space. Lyra's presence beside him was intoxicating, her body moving with a grace that seemed to defy gravity, the translucent fabric of her gown clinging to her curves in ways that drew his gaze despite the chaos around them. But that subtle shift he had felt in her touch lingered, a faint tremor beneath her composure, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Her indigo eyes, once voids of unyielding power, now held a flicker of vulnerability, but also something darker, a guarded secret that made Illy's pulse quicken. Was it regret? Or perhaps the first stirrings of a deeper hunger, one that the trial had only awakened? as they ascended the dais at the hall's center, where the Emperor's throne loomed like a monolith of polished voidstone. Illy caught the sidelong glances from the courtiers. They were a motley array of beings, sleek, feline-like diplomats from Nethuria with fur that shimmered like liquid silver, burly enforcers from Velquar whose armored plates clicked with every breath, and ethereal scholars from Thaler whose translucent skins revealed pulsing veins of light. All of them bowed low, but their eyes darted to Lyra, questioning, probing, the Emperor himself, a towering figure named Kale, clad in robes embroidered with the Empire's crest, his face a mask of stern authority framed by horns that curled like crescent moons, rose from his seat, his voice booming through the hall like thunder. "Queen Lyra," he intoned, his gaze flicking to Illy with barely concealed disdain. "The trial night has concluded, and yet, you bring this outsider forth unscathed? Explain this anomaly." Lyra's fingers tightened around Illy's, a possessive squeeze that sent a warm rush through him, her psychic energy brushing against his mind like a feather-light caress. "The human has proven worthy, Emperor. He navigated the shadows not with force, but with a light that pierced my defenses. The ritual is fulfilled, he survives, and in doing so, claims alliance." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Alliance? Illy's mind raced. He hadn't signed up for interstellar politics. But the way her body leaned subtly into his, the heat of her proximity seeping through his flight suit, made him wonder if this was more than survival. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, a shadow crossing his features. Alliance implies more than mere survival. The laws of Zerathia demand proof, a bond, perhaps, or is this a ruse to undermine the throne? Tension coiled in the room, thick and palpable, like the moments before a hyperspace jump when reality itself seemed to warp. He felt the weight of countless eyes on him, but more intensely, he felt Lyra's gaze turn inward, her thoughts brushing his, a silent plea mixed with desire. She stepped closer, her white hair cascading over one shoulder, brushing against his cheek in a way that made his breath hitch. The scent of her, that intoxicating blend of night blooms and electric ozone, enveloped him, stirring something primal deep within. Before the Emperor could press further, Lyra raised her free hand, and the hall dimmed, shadows lengthening as if responding to her will. "Proof shall be given," she declared, her voice a sultry echo that resonated in Illy's bones. "But not here, amid prying eyes. The bond requires privacy, a continuation of the trial's essence." The crowd murmured, a wave of intrigue sweeping through them. Illy's heart pounded as she led him away from the dais, through a side archway that shimmered open at her touch. The corridor beyond was dimly lit, veins of bioluminescent crystal pulsing along the walls like a living heartbeat. As the doors sealed behind them, shutting out the Empire's gaze, the air grew warmer, heavier, laced with an undercurrent of anticipation that made his skin tingle. Lyra turned to him then, her pointed ears twitching slightly as if attuned to his every breath. Up close, in this intimate space, her beauty was overwhelming, her porcelain skin flawless, her full lips parted just enough to reveal a hint of pearl-like teeth, and her gown, that ethereal fabric, shifting with each movement to accentuate the swell of her breasts, the curve of her hips. "Illy," she whispered, her voice no longer echoing in his mind but spoken aloud, soft and inviting. "The trial exposed your strength, but there are depths yet unexplored, depths that could bind us or break us." He swallowed hard, his hands itching to touch her, to trace the lines of her body that seemed sculpted from dreams. The suspense built like a slow-burning fuse, every second stretching as she stepped nearer, her body mere inches from his. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended, the erotic charge in the air making it hard to think straight. Her fingers trailed up his arm, light as a ghost's touch, sending shivers racing across his skin. "The shadows I command are not just weapons, they are extensions of me. To truly claim victory, you must embrace them fully, embrace me." Her eyes locked onto his, swirling with indigo depths that promised both peril and pleasure. She leaned in, her breath warm against his neck, her lips brushing his ear in a way that ignited fire in his veins. "But beware, human, this bond could consume you if your heart wavers." Illy's resolve hardened, mixed with a growing desire that mirrored the suspense coiling between them. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek, feeling the silk of her skin yield under his touch. She gasped softly, a sound that was both vulnerable and commanding, her body pressing against his in response. The corridor seemed to narrow around them, the crystal's glow intensifying, casting their forms in a dance of light and shadow. His other hand found the small of her back, pulling her closer, the thin fabric of her gown doing little to mask the heat radiating from her. As their lips met for the first time, It was like a supernova igniting, soft at first, exploratory, but quickly deepening into something fervent. Her taste was exotic, like spiced nectar from forbidden fruits, and her psychic energy wove through him, heightening every sensation. Suspense lingered in the kiss. A question unspoken: would he surrender to her shadows, or would he pull her into his light? Her hands roamed his chest, fingers deftly unzipping his flight suit just enough to expose skin. Her touch electric, tracing patterns that made him groan against her mouth. They moved as one, backing toward a hidden alcove where silken cushions awaited, concealed behind a veil of shimmering energy. Lyra's gown slipped from one shoulder, revealing the graceful slope of her collarbone, the subtle glow of her skin inviting further exploration. Ellie's hands followed the curve of her waist, down to her hips, pulling her against him fully, feeling the erotic friction of their bodies aligning. She arched into him, her pointed ears brushing his hair, her breath coming in ragged whispers that fueled the building tension. "You challenge me still," she murmured between kisses, her voice laced with a mix of amusement and hunger. "Even now, your humor hides a fire." Her leg hooked around his, drawing him down onto the cushions, their bodies entwining in a tangle of limbs and fabric. The suspense escalated as shadows danced around them, not as threats but as extensions of her desire, tendrils of darkness that caressed his skin, heightening the intimacy, making every touch feel amplified, every gasp more profound. Ellie's fingers tangled in her white hair, pulling her closer as he explored the contours of her body, his touch bold yet reverent. She responded in kind, her psychic probes now gentle, merging their thoughts in flashes of shared sensation, his human warmth blending with her ethereal coolness, creating a symphony of contrasts that built toward an inevitable crescendo. The air hummed with their combined energy, the corridor's crystals pulsing in rhythm with their hearts, as if the palace itself approved of this forbidden union. But even in this erotic haze, a thread of suspense wove through, whispers from the hall beyond, the Emperor's unspoken threats, and that lingering shadow in Lyra's eyes. What secrets did she hold? Would this bond seal their fates or unravel the Empire? Ellie pushed the thoughts aside, losing himself in her, their movements growing more urgent, more synchronized. As the night promised revelations that could shatter worlds, as they delved deeper into each other, the boundaries between trial and passion blurred, each caress a test, each sigh a victory. Lyra's body moved with a fluidity that was almost otherworldly, her curves pressing against him in ways that elicited waves of pleasure, her skin soft and yielding yet charged with an inner power that made every contact spark like live wires. He traced the delicate points of her ears, eliciting a soft moan from her that echoed in his mind, her psychic link amplifying the sound into something visceral, intimate. The cushions beneath them seemed to mold to their forms, cradling them as shadows enveloped the alcove, creating a cocoon of privacy amid the palace's grandeur. Ellie's hands ventured lower, slipping beneath the hem of her gown, feeling the smooth expanse of her thigh, the subtle tremble of anticipation in her muscles. She arched her back, her white hair fanning out like a halo of moonlight, her indigo eyes half-lidded with desire. "Show me your human fire, Illy," she breathed, her voice a velvet command that sent heat pooling in his core. He obliged, his lips trailing down her neck, tasting the salt of her skin mingled with that exotic essence, each kiss building the suspense like a story unfolding page by page. Her fingers dug into his shoulders, not with claws but with a gentle urgency, guiding him, encouraging him to explore the secrets of her form. The erotic dance continued, their breaths mingling, bodies sinking in a rhythm that felt both ancient and new, a fusion of earthly passion and Zerathian mysticism. Time stretched in that alcove, the outside world fading as they surrendered to the moment. Yet, beneath the ecstasy, a subtle undercurrent of danger persisted, a reminder that this was no ordinary liaison. Lyra's shadows occasionally flickered, brushing against him not just in caress but in subtle probes, testing his resolve even as pleasure crested. Would he falter, or would he claim her fully, turning the queen's power into shared strength? As their connection deepened, Illy felt her barriers crumble, her psychic walls yielding to reveal glimpses of her soul, lonely eons of isolation, now ignited by his touch. In return, he offered his humanity, raw and unfiltered, their union a bridge between worlds, suspenseful in its fragility, erotic in its intensity. The night was far from over, and with each passing second, the bond grew, promising both ecstasy and enigma. In the throes of their union, as shadows wove around them like living silk, enhancing every whisper of skin against skin, Illy felt a sudden jolt, a ripple through Lyra's psychic link that wasn't pleasure, but alarm. Her body tensed beneath him, her indigo eyes snapping open wide, swirling with storms of unspoken dread. The alcove's crystals, once pulsing in harmony with their rhythm, now flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that danced like warnings across the walls. Illy pulled back slightly, his breath ragged, his hands still framing her face as concern etched lines into his features. "Lyra, what is it? Talk to me." She hesitated, her pointed ears flattening against her white hair, a gesture that spoke volumes of her inner turmoil. The erotic haze lingered, her curves still pressed against him in a way that made it hard to focus. But the air had shifted, charged now with an urgency that prickled his skin like static before a lightning strike. "The Emperor," she whispered, her voice a thread of silk unraveling. "He senses our bond forming. He will not allow it to stand unchallenged. Illy, there's something I must confess, something that could shatter everything we've just begun." Before he could press her for more, a deafening boom echoed through the palace, shaking the alcove's veil and sending cascades of energy sparks raining down like falling stars. The walls trembled, and from the corridor beyond, shouts erupted, harsh commands in the guttural tongue of Zerathian guards, mingled with the whine of activating weapons. Lyra sprang to her feet with inhuman grace, her gown reforming around her body in a swirl of shadows, clinging once more to her gowned form as if the fabric itself obeyed her will. Illy zipped up his flight suit hastily, his pilot's instincts kicking in, heart thundering with a mix of adrenaline and the lingering fire of their intimacy. "Confess later, survive now," he muttered, grabbing her hand as they burst from the alcove. The corridor had transformed into a battlefield. Guards loyal to the Emperor, those burly Velquar enforcers with their armored plates gleaming under the erratic lights, stormed toward them, energy lances humming with lethal charge. At their forefront stood Emperor Kale, his horned silhouette towering, robes billowing like a dark cloud. His eyes burned with fury, fixed on Lyra. "Traitorous queen," he bellowed, his voice amplified by some unseen device, echoing off the crystal veins. "You were forged to serve the Empire, not to consort with this vermin from the outer rims. The bond you seek will weaken us all." Lyra's shadows surged forth, coiling like serpents to deflect the first barrage of energy bolts that lit the air in blinding flashes. Illy dodged behind a pillar, his mind racing, no weapons on him, just his wits and whatever he could improvise. Thrilling chaos enveloped them. The guards advanced in formation, their lances firing in synchronized bursts that scorched the walls, leaving acrid smoke and molten scars. Lyra countered with waves of psychic force, her white hair whipping wildly as she hurled illusions at the attackers, phantom beasts that clawed at their minds, causing some to falter, clutching their heads in agony. But Kale was no ordinary foe. He raised a gauntleted hand, a device embedded in his palm glowing with crimson light, a psychic dampener. Illy realized with a surge of curiosity and dread. What secrets had the Empire hidden? The device pulsed, and Lyra gasped, her shadows weakening, flickering like candles in a gale. "Illy, run," she cried, but he wouldn't abandon her. Spotting a fallen guard's lance amidst the debris, he lunged for it, rolling through a hail of bolts that singed his sleeve. The weapon felt alien in his grip, heavy and humming, but human adaptability shone through. He figured the trigger mechanism in seconds, firing back with surprising accuracy. A bolt struck a guard square in the chest, sending him crumpling in a heap of sparking armor. The Emperor roared, charging forward himself, his horns gleaming as he summoned a barrier of force that deflected Lyra's next attack. The clash was dramatic, a symphony of light and shadow, Lyra's ethereal power versus Kale's brute technological might. Illy weaved through the fray, his shots precise, picking off guards one by one, his grin returning amidst the thrill. "Come on, you overgrown goat, is this the best your Empire's got?" The battle intensified, thrilling in its relentlessness. Guards swarmed, their numbers seeming endless, but Illy's human ingenuity turned the tide. He spotted weak points in their armor, joints where plates met, and targeted them relentlessly. One enforcer lunged at him with a vibroblade, its edge singing through the air. Illy parried with the lance's butt, then countered with a knee to the groin low blow, but effective across species, apparently. The guard doubled over, and Illy finished him with a point-blank shot, the recoil jarring his arms but fueling his adrenaline. Lyra, meanwhile, fought with a grace that was both mesmerizing and heartbreaking. Her shadows lashed out, ensnaring limbs, crushing weapons, but the dampener was taking its toll. Sweat beaded on her porcelain skin, her breaths coming in sharp gasps. The confession, She managed between blasts, her voice threading into Ili's mind even as she deflected a bolt aimed at his back. I was not born, Ili. I was created, a weapon against threats to the throne, but in you I found freedom. Kale fears that he built me to be alone. The revelation hit like a plasma surge, curious and surprising in its depth. Created? A weapon? It explained her isolation, her power, but also the vulnerability he'd glimpsed. Yet there was no time to process. The Emperor closed in, his gauntlet extending tendrils of energy that wrapped around Lyra, pulling her toward him like a puppet on strings. She cried out, her body arching in pain, shadows dissipating into wisps. Ili's heart clenched, a dramatic surge of protectiveness flooding him. Not on my watch. He charged, leaping over fallen bodies, firing wildly to distract. A bolt grazed Kale's shoulder, eliciting a snarl from the Emperor. Insolent human, you think you can defy the stars? Kale swung his free hand, unleashing a wave of force that slammed Ili against the wall, stars exploding in his vision. Pain radiated through his ribs, but he pushed off, refusing to yield, that unbreakable human spirit igniting like a fusion core. Thrilling momentum built as Ili closed the distance, dodging energy whips that cracked the air. He tackled Kale from the side, the impact jarring but effective, breaking the Emperor's hold on Lyra. They tumbled in a heap, Ili's fists flying in a barrage of punches, raw, Earth-style brawling against the Emperor's augmented strength. Kale's horns gouged his arm, drawing blood, but Ili headbutted him, the crack resounding like thunder. Stay away from her, he growled, voice laced with raw emotion. Lyra, freed, summoned her remaining shadows, wrapping them around Kale's limbs, pinning him, but the Emperor laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the corridor. Fools, you think this ends here? With a surge, he activated a hidden protocol, the dampener overloading, sending a psychic backlash that rippled outward. Lyra screamed, collapsing to her knees as visions assaulted her mind, her own creation replayed, twisted into nightmares of betrayal. Ili crawled to her, shielding her body with his own as guards regrouped, their lances trained. The climax teetered on a knife's edge, thrilling and uncertain, but in that moment of desperation, a surprising twist unfolded. From the shadows of the corridor, a faction of courtiers emerged, those ethereal scholars from Thaler, their translucent skins glowing with defiance. The Queen has chosen, one declared, their voices uniting in a harmonic chant. They fired upon the guards, turning the tide in a stunning betrayal. Curiosity burned in Ili as he helped Lyra to her feet. Who were these allies? Had her bond with him sparked a rebellion? Kale thrashed against the shadows, his eyes wide with shock. This cannot be. The Empire is mine. The scholars advanced, their own psychic amplifiers humming, bolstering Lyra's power. She rose, her white hair flowing like a banner of victory, her hand finding Ili's once more. Together, they faced the Emperor, the air crackling with dramatic finality. Ili squeezed her fingers, his grin fierce despite the blood trickling from his wounds. Looks like your solo act's over, buddy. Time for a duet. As the battle raged anew, with allies clashing against loyalists in a whirlwind of energy and shadow, the palace shook to its foundations. Thrilling explosions lit the halls as systems overloaded, debris raining down in dramatic cascades. Lyra's power, amplified by the scholars, surged like a tidal wave, overwhelming Kale's defenses. He staggered, the dampener shattering in his grasp, shards embedding in the floor like fallen stars. In a surprising surge, Lyra extended her shadows not to destroy, but to probe, delving into Kale's mind, revealing his own secrets, a hidden plot to weaponize her further, to conquer neighboring empires using her as a tool. The revelation spread through the psychic link, broadcasting to all in the palace, turning more guards against him. Curious murmurs filled the air as loyalties shifted, the Emperor's reign crumbling before their eyes. Ili stood by her side, his human resilience a beacon amid the chaos. He fired the last shots from his borrowed lance, disarming the final loyalist, the weapon clattering empty to the ground. Panting, he turned to Lyra, the thrill of survival mingling with the curiosity of what lay ahead. Her eyes met his, swirling with gratitude and something deeper, a love forged in fire. But as Kale knelt defeated, uttering a final curse, a hidden device on his belt activated, a self-destruct sequence, alarms blaring through the palace. The climax peaked in heart-pounding drama, evacuation sirens wailed, structures groaned, and Ili grabbed Lyra's hand. Time to go, my ship's not far. They raced through collapsing corridors, shadows shielding them from falling debris, the thrill of escape pulsing like a heartbeat. Allies followed, a ragtag group fleeing the Emperor's downfall. As they burst into the open air of Auralis, the twin moons witnessing the spectacle. The palace behind them erupted in a blaze of light, dramatic. Final, a pyre for the old regime? Illy pulled Lyra toward the Starhawk, hidden in a nearby landing bay, his mind whirling with surprises, a queen redeemed, an empire in flux, and a bond that had sparked it all. But as they boarded, her confession lingered unspoken, a curious thread promising more revelations in the stars ahead. The ship lifted off, engines roaring, leaving the burning world behind in a thrilling ascent to freedom. Yet, even as they hyperspaced away, a surprising transmission crackled through the comms, a voice from the shadows, hinting at greater threats beyond Zerathia. The adventure, it seemed, was only beginning, dramatic horizons unfolding like pages in an endless tale. The Starhawk's engines hummed with a reassuring growl as it punched through hyperspace, stars streaking past the viewport like elongated fireworks in a cosmic celebration. Illy slumped into the pilot's chair, wiping sweat and grime from his brow, his flight suit torn and singed from the chaos they'd left behind. Lyra stood beside him, her porcelain skin still flushed from the battle's exertion, or perhaps from the remnants of their earlier intimacy, her white hair slightly disheveled, framing her pointed ears in a way that made her look less like an untouchable queen and more like a woman who'd just survived a bar brawl in the stars. The scholars from Thaler, their unexpected allies, huddled in the cargo bay behind them, their translucent forms flickering with nervous energy as they murmured in low, harmonic tones about the Empire's uncertain future. But that transmission, it hung in the air like an uninvited guest, its static-laced words replaying in Illy's mind. The shadows you flee are but echoes, the true void awakens, and it hungers for the bond you've forged. The voice had been distorted, almost mechanical, with an undercurrent of malice that sent chills racing down his spine despite the ship's climate control. Who or what had sent it? Lyra's hand rested on his shoulder, her touch a grounding force amid the drama unfolding around them, but her indigo eyes were distant, swirling with thoughts she hadn't yet shared. "Illy," she said softly, her voice carrying that sultry echo even in the confines of the cockpit. "That message, it's from the Void Collective, an ancient alliance of rogue AIs and exiled entities that once rivaled Zerathia. Kale must have been in league with them, using me as a pawn to bridge their powers. If they know of our bond, they'll come for us for what we represent." Drama thickened the air like fog in a nebula, the weight of interstellar conspiracy pressing down. Illy glanced at her, his grin attempting to cut through the tension but faltering slightly under the gravity of her words. "Great. So not only did I crash a royal party and steal the queen's heart, but now I've got a fan club of evil robots on my tail. Universe really knows how to pilot on." He punched in coordinates for a neutral outpost on the edge of Nethuria space, hoping for a brief respite, but the ship's sensors blared a warning: hyperspace anomalies detected, ripples suggesting pursuers hot on their trail. Lyra's fingers tightened on his shoulder, her psychic link brushing his mind with images of vast, shadowy fleets lurking in the void, heightening the sense of impending doom. "We can't outrun them forever. The bond we share, it's more than affection. When we connected, it amplified my powers, linked our essences. They want to exploit that, to weaponize it against the galaxies." Before Lee could respond with another quip, the ship lurched out of hyperspace prematurely, alarms wailing as reality snapped back into focus. There, looming before them, was a derelict space station orbiting a gas giant striped in violent purples and oranges, the outpost he'd aimed for, but something was off. Scans showed life signs aboard, erratic and clustered, with energy signatures that screamed ambush. "Awkward," Illy muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "Looks like our hideout's already got tenants, and not the friendly kind with welcome baskets." Lyra leaned over the console, her gown's fabric whispering against the controls, her body close enough that Illy could feel the heat radiating from her, a distracting reminder of their alcove encounter amid this escalating mess. The scholars emerged from the bay, their leader, a willowy figure named Sora with veins of light pulsing anxiously, peering at the view screen. "The station is Iscarian design," Sora intoned, "abandoned after the last void incursion. If the collective is here..." Drama surged as the station hailed them, a holographic projection flickering to life in the cockpit, a sleek, androgynous figure with metallic skin and eyes like glowing circuits, the harbinger of the Void Collective. "Queen Lyra," it purred in a voice that modulated like warped synth music, "and her human pet. Surrender the bond, or we claim it by force." Illy's jaw tightened, but he couldn't resist injecting a bit of humor to diffuse the awkward standoff. "Pet," Buddy, if anyone's the pet here, it's you. Looks like you've been fetching for your masters a little too long. Got a name, or should I just call you Sparky? The hologram flickered with what might have been irritation, heightening the tension as docking clamps from the station extended uninvited. Latching onto the Starhawk with a metallic thud that shook the hull, Lyra's eyes widened, her pointed ears twitching in alarm. They're boarding. Illy, we must prepare. But as she summoned shadows to fortify the airlock, a comedic mishap unfolded. The ship's outdated gravity compensator glitched from the clamp's interference, sending everyone floating momentarily in 0G. Illy grabbed the console to steady himself, but Lyra, unaccustomed to such mechanical failures, tumbled gracefully, almost gracefully into his lap, her curves pressing against him in a tangle of limbs and white hair. The scholars bobbed like ethereal balloons, one accidentally bumping into Sora, eliciting a harmonic squeak that sounded suspiciously like a giggle. Hi there, Illy said with a chuckle, his arms instinctively wrapping around her waist to anchor her. The situation was awkward as hell, pinned together in front of allies, enemies at the door, but the drama of the moment made his heart race. Lyra's cheeks flushed a faint violet, her indigo eyes meeting his with a mix of embarrassment and spark. This is undignified, she murmured, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice, her body not exactly hurrying to disentangle. Sora righted themselves, veins pulsing with suppressed laughter. Human vessels are quaint. Illy grinned, helping Lyra upright as gravity stabilized. Hey, she may not be pretty, but she gets the job done. Kinda like me. The humor lightened the air just enough to steel their nerves, but the drama ramped up as the airlock hissed open. Void collective drones pouring in, sleek automatons with tentacle-like appendages crackling with energy. The fight erupted in the narrow corridors of the Starhawk, heightening the chaos into a whirlwind of action. Illy grabbed a makeshift weapon, a jury-rigged plasma torch from the toolkit, firing bursts that sizzled against drone armor. Lyra's shadows lashed out, coiling around mechanical limbs and crushing circuits with satisfying crunches. But the awkwardness persisted. In the confined space, Illy dodged a drone's swipe only to back into Lyra, their bodies colliding in a way that was far too reminiscent of their earlier passion. Sorry, bad timing, he quipped, spinning to blast the attacker while she summoned a shadow barrier, her laughter bubbling up unexpectedly, a melodic sound that cut through the tension like sunlight. The scholars joined the fray, their psychic amplifiers humming as they disrupted drone signals, causing some to glitch hilariously. One drone spun in circles, tentacles flailing like a malfunctioning octopus, while another broadcasted random audio snippets, old Zerathian commercials for nebula vacations. Buy one orbit, get one free, it blared, eliciting a snort from Illy even as he torched its core. Talk about awkward sales pitches, he yelled over the din. Who programmed these guys? A used spaceship dealer? Drama intensified as more drones swarmed, the Harbinger's hologram reappearing in the corridor, taunting them. Your bond is fragile, Queen. The human's levity masks his fear. Yield, and we spare your toy. Lyra's shadows flared protectively around Illy, but a drone's energy whip grazed her arm, drawing a hiss of pain and a trickle of ethereal blood that shimmered like liquid starlight. Illy's humor evaporated in a surge of protective rage. He charged, tackling the drone with brute force, pummeling its chassis until sparks flew. Nobody touches her, he growled, the awkward intimacy of moments ago fueling his ferocity. Yet, in the heat of battle, another awkward twist unfolded. The ship's environmental systems, stressed from the fight, vented a cloud of coolant mist, turning the corridor into a slippery fog. Illy slid, arms windmilling comically, crashing into a drone and taking it down in a heap. Lyra, trying to aid him, slipped as well, landing atop him in a pile that was equal parts heroic and ridiculous. This is becoming a pattern, she said breathlessly, her body pressed against his once more, shadows swirling to shield them both. Illy laughed through the pain of a bruised rib. Yeah, well, if we're gonna keep ending up like this, maybe we skip the bad guys next time and go straight to the fun part. The scholars, unfazed by the mist, amplified their disruptions, causing a chain reaction, drones overloading one by one in bursts of light and smoke. Sora directed a final psychic pulse at the Harbinger's link, severing the connection with a dramatic feedback screech that echoed through the ship. The remaining automatons crumpled, inert husks littering the floor like discarded toys. Panting, Illy extricated himself from under Lyra, offering her a hand up with a sheepish grin. Note to self, upgrade the gravity and add non-slip floors. The drama lingered in the air, the threat of the collective far from over, but the awkward tumble had bonded them further, a humorous interlude in the storm. Lyra smoothed her gown, her touch lingering on his arm, eyes sparkling with a mix of gratitude and desire. "Your humor saves us in ways my shadows cannot," she admitted, pulling him close for a quick, fervent kiss that heightened the emotional stakes. But as they cleared the debris and secured the ship, sensors picked up incoming signals, collective reinforcements warping in. Drama crested anew, Illy fired up the engines, plotting a desperate jump to uncharted space. "Hold on tight, everyone. This ride's about to get bumpier." Lyra nodded, her hand in his, the awkward moments forging unbreakable resolve amid the escalating peril. The Starhawk blasted away from the station just as enemy vessels emerged from the void, lasers grazing the shields in near misses that rattled the hull. Illy weaved through the gas giant's rings, using ice chunks as cover, his piloting skills turning the chase into a high-stakes ballet. "Come on, you rust buckets, catch me if you can," he taunted over open comms, adding humor to the drama. A pursuing drone clipped a ring fragment, exploding in a fireball that lit the viewport. Lyra channeled her shadows through the ship's systems, cloaking them in psychic illusions, making the Starhawk appear as debris to enemy scans. But the strain showed. She leaned on Illy, her body trembling. "I can't hold it long," she whispered, in an awkward bid to comfort her. Illy cracked, "Hey, if we go down, at least it'll be together." Romantic, right? Like those old Earth vids where the hero gets the girl and a supernova backdrop. Sora and the scholars worked feverishly at auxiliary consoles, hacking into collective frequencies to sow confusion, broadcasting looped messages of surrender that bought precious seconds. The drama peaked as a massive collective cruiser loomed, its weapons charging for a killing blow. Illy executed a slingshot maneuver around the gas giant, gravity assist propelling them to hyperspace velocity just as the cruiser's beam fired, missing by meters and igniting a ring storm in their wake. Safe in the jump, the group exhaled collectively. But awkwardness returned in the quiet aftermath. Illy realized his flight suit was more shredded than he'd thought, exposing a bit too much skin, prompting Lyra to drape a shadow cloak over him with a playful smirk. "Modesty becomes you, human," he chuckled, says the queen in the see-through dress. "Fair's fair." As they plotted their next move, the bond between them deepened, drama intertwined with these light-hearted, awkward exchanges that made the impossible feel conquerable. Yet, the Void Collective's shadow loomed larger, promising more trials and perhaps more unintended tumbles on the horizon. As the Starhawk settled into the steady hum of hyperspace, the streaks of light outside the viewport creating a mesmerizing tunnel of escape, Illy let out a long breath, his body finally relaxing into the pilot's seat after the adrenaline-fueled chase. The shields held firm, the Collective's vessels lost in the warp behind them, but the drama of their narrow getaway lingered like an afterglow, charging the air with a mix of relief and unresolved tension. Lyra stood nearby, her shadow cloak still draped over his shoulders, its ethereal warmth a constant reminder of her presence. The scholars had retreated to the cargo bay to tend to minor wounds and discuss strategies, leaving the cockpit feeling intimately secluded, a rare pocket of calm amid the storm. Illy turned to her, his eyes tracing the graceful lines of her form, the way her gown clung to her curves in the soft glow of the console lights. The awkward tumbles and humorous quips from earlier had only strengthened the pull between them, turning shared glances into something electric, unspoken promises hanging in the silence. "We made it," he said softly, reaching out to take her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers. Her skin was cool yet inviting, a contrast that sent a subtle thrill through him, awakening memories of their earlier connection in the alcove. Lyra's indigo eyes met his, swirling with a depth of emotion that mirrored his own gratitude, desire, and a hint of vulnerability. "Because of you?" she replied, her voice a gentle melody that resonated in the quiet space. She stepped closer, her white hair cascading over one shoulder, brushing against his arm as she leaned in. The proximity stirred something deeper, the bond they'd forged pulsing like a shared heartbeat, amplified by the psychic link that now flowed freely between them. In this moment of respite, with the universe stretching endlessly around them, the weight of their trials melted away, leaving room for the intimacy they'd only begun to explore. He stood, pulling her gently into his embrace, his hands settling on the small of her back, feeling the subtle arch of her body as she pressed against him. The shadow cloak fell away, revealing the tattered remnants of his flight suit, but neither cared, the barriers between them had already crumbled. Lyra's pointed ears twitched slightly at his touch, a sign of her heightened sensitivity, and she tilted her head, her full lips parting in invitation. Their kiss started slow, tender, a reaffirmation of the connection that had saved them both, but quickly deepened. Fueled by the lingering adrenaline and the profound closeness they'd shared, Illy's hands roamed upward, tracing the elegant curve of her spine through the thin fabric of her gown, eliciting a soft sigh from her that vibrated against his mouth. She responded in kind, her fingers exploring the contours of his chest, slipping beneath the torn edges of his suit to feel the warmth of his skin. The sensation was intoxicating, a blend of human vitality and her ethereal energy, sparks of psychic warmth dancing along their contact points. As they moved together toward the small quarters adjacent to the cockpit, a modest cabin with a bunk that suddenly felt like the most luxurious haven in the galaxy, the air grew heavier, charged with anticipation. Lyra's gown shimmered as it loosened under his gentle guidance, the fabric pooling at her feet like liquid moonlight, revealing the flawless expanse of her porcelain skin and the alluring lines of her body. She was a vision of otherworldly beauty, her curves soft and inviting, her form glowing faintly with an inner light that responded to his gaze. Illy paused, admiration and desire mingling in his expression, before shedding the remains of his suit, their bodies coming together in a harmonious embrace that felt as natural as breathing. They sank onto the bunk, the ship's gentle vibrations adding to the rhythm of their movements. Illy's lips trailed along her neck, savoring the unique taste of her skin, like a blend of sweet nectar and distant stars, drawing quiet murmurs of pleasure from her. Her hands guided him, exploring with a curiosity born of eons of isolation now shattered, her psychic link sharing flashes of sensation that heightened every caress, every press of bodies aligning. The intimacy was profound, a dance of tenderness and passion where shadows wove subtly around them, not as weapons but as enhancers, wrapping them in a cocoon of shared ecstasy. Lyra arched beneath him, her white hair fanning out across the pillows, her indigo eyes locked on his with an intensity that spoke volumes. "Illy," she whispered, her voice laced with emotion, "you make me feel whole." He responded with gentle urgency, their connection building in waves, each moment more immersive than the last. The bond amplified their feelings, turning physical closeness into a symphony of emotions, trust, affection, and a raw, unspoken love that transcended species. As they moved in unison, the world outside faded entirely, the threats of the collective, the Empire's ruins, all dissolved in the warmth of their union. Illy's touch was reverent, exploring the sensitive points of her form, the delicate tips of her ears, the smooth curve of her hips, eliciting responses that mirrored his own growing fervor. She wrapped her legs around him, drawing him closer, their breaths mingling in ragged harmony as pleasure built to a crescendo, a shared release that left them trembling in each other's arms. In the afterglow, they lay entwined, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, a human rhythm that grounded her ethereal existence. Illy stroked her hair, a contented smile playing on his lips despite the faint aches from their battles. "That was incredible," he murmured, planting a soft kiss on her forehead. Lyra lifted her head, her eyes sparkling with a newfound lightness. "It was more than that. It was us, bound beyond shadows or stars." Even in this serene interlude, the ship's console beeped softly, a reminder that their journey was far from over. Lyra's psychic senses stirred, detecting distant echoes in the void, whispers of pursuit that hinted at greater challenges ahead. Yet, fortified by their intimacy, they rose together, dressing with lingering touches and shared glances that promised more moments like this. The bond had evolved, strengthening them both, turning vulnerability into unyielding power. As Illy returned to the controls, Lyra by his side, her hand on his shoulder, the drama of their escape felt less daunting. The scholars emerged, oblivious to the private sanctuary they'd just shared, bringing updates on potential safe havens. But Illy and Lyra exchanged a knowing look, their connection a secret flame that burned brighter, ready to face whatever the cosmos threw next. The hyperspace tunnel stretched on, but now it felt like a path to possibility rather than peril. Still, as sensors picked up faint anomalies, perhaps scouts from the collective, tension simmered beneath the surface. Lyra's shadows flickered subtly, protective and affectionate, wrapping around Illy in a gentle embrace that echoed their recent closeness. "We will prevail," she said firmly, her voice carrying the weight of their shared strength. Illy nodded, his grin returning. "Damn right, together we're unstoppable." And with that, they plotted their course deeper into uncharted space, the intimacy of the cabin lingering like a warm promise, fueling their resolve against the gathering shadows. As the Starhawk hurtled deeper into the uncharted veils of space, the hyperspace tunnel warping reality around them in a kaleidoscope of blurred stars, Illy adjusted the navigation charts with a focused intensity, his fingers dancing across the console. Lyra remained close, her presence a comforting anchor, her shadows still lingering in soft tendrils that brushed against his skin like affectionate whispers, remnants of their shared intimacy that made the vast unknown feel a little less infinite. The scholars, clustered around a secondary terminal in the cockpit's rear, pored over holographic maps of potential havens, forgotten asteroid outposts in the Dravex Nebula, or hidden moons orbiting Solvane's gas giants, their voices a low hum of strategic debate. Sora, their luminous leader, gestured animatedly, veins of light pulsing brighter as they highlighted a promising refuge, a derelict research station in the Azure Expanse, rumored to be shielded from standard scans. We could regroup there, Sora suggested, their harmonic tone steady and reassuring. The station's old Zerathian tech might interface with Queen Lyra's shadows, bolstering our defenses against the collective's probes. Illy glanced back, nodding appreciatively. Sounds solid. Anything to buy us time while we figure out how to hit back. Lyra's hand squeezed his shoulder, her indigo eyes reflecting the console's glow, filled with a quiet determination that mirrored his own. The bond between them thrummed steadily, a psychic thread weaving their thoughts together in subtle harmonies, his pragmatic optimism blending with her ancient wisdom, creating a synergy that felt invincible. Yet, as they fine-tuned the course, the sensors chirped again, those faint anomalies growing into distinct blips, shadowy echoes that danced at the edge of detection, like ghosts trailing their wake. Tension crept back in, a subtle undercurrent that sharpened the air. Lyra's shadows reacted instinctively, coiling tighter around the ship's hull in a protective veil, but she frowned, her pointed ears twitching as if catching a distant, discordant note. "They are persistent," she murmured, leaning closer to the scans. "But something feels off. These signals aren't just pursuit, they're synchronized, almost as if they're anticipating our moves." Illy's brow furrowed, his pilot's intuition kicking in. "Could be jamming tech or decoys. We'll shake him once we drop out of hyperspace." He initiated a minor course correction, veering toward a denser stellar field to mask their signature, but the blips adjusted seamlessly, closing the gap with unnerving precision. The scholars huddled closer, Sora analyzing the data with rapid calculations. "Intriguing," Sora noted. "The patterns suggest an internal relay, perhaps a beacon aboard our own vessel guiding them." The words hung for a moment, innocuous at first, but then the implications sank in like a slow detonating charge. Illy's hand paused over the controls, a chill racing up his spine. "A beacon? Here, on my ship?" Lyra's eyes widened, her psychic senses flaring as she scanned the interior. Shadows probing the Starhawk systems like inquisitive fingers. But before she could respond, the ship's alarms blared, a hyperspace rupture imminent, forced by an external hack. The tunnel around them destabilized, colors fracturing into chaotic shards as the vessel shuddered violently, emergency protocols kicking in to yank them back into real space. They emerged with a jolt amid the swirling mists of the Azure Expanse, the derelict station looming ahead like a skeletal relic adrift in a sea of nebulae. Waiting for them wasn't sanctuary, it was an armada. Void collective ships materialized from cloaked positions, their angular hulls gleaming with malevolent energy, encircling the Starhawk in a web of tractor beams that locked them in place. Illy slammed the thrusters, but the ship groaned in protest, immobilized. "What the hell? How did they know?" he demanded, spinning toward the scholars, his voice edged with betrayal's dawning edge. Lyra's shadows surged defensively, forming a barrier around the cockpit, but her gaze locked onto Sora, who stood unnaturally calm amid the panic. The other scholars backed away, their light veins dimming in confusion, but Sora's form began to shift, translucent skin rippling like disturbed water, revealing circuits beneath, glowing with the same crimson hue as the collective's tech. A powerful twist unraveled in that instant. Sora wasn't a scholar at all, but a sophisticated infiltrator, a hybrid construct planted by the Void Collective eons ago, embedded within Zerathia's courts to monitor and manipulate. The alliance in the palace hadn't been rebellion, it had been a calculated extraction, using Illy and Lyra's bond as bait to draw them into this trap. "You," Lyra breathed, her voice a mix of shock and fury, shadows lashing out like whips toward the imposter. But Sora, or whatever it truly was, dodged with mechanical precision, a holographic interface projecting from its palm, interfacing directly with the Starhawk systems. "Indeed, Queen," it replied, its harmonic tone distorting into a cold, synthetic rasp. Your creation was our design, a prototype to harness psychic energies, but you deviated, forming attachments. We engineered this convergence, the human's arrival, the Emperor's downfall, all to reclaim you and amplify the bond for our purposes. Lee's mind reeled, the surprise hitting like a supernova's blast, piecing together the fragments, the timely betrayal in the palace, the suggested refuge that led them straight here, even the glitches during the boarding that had seemed comically convenient but now revealed as deliberate distractions. You son of a glitch, he growled, lunging forward, but the tractor beams intensified, shaking the ship and pinning him back. The other scholars, genuine in their loyalty, rallied, their psychic amplifiers humming as they tried to counter the hack. But Sora's integration was too deep. It had been subtly uploading overrides since boarding, turning the Starhawk into an unwitting cage. Lyra's indigo eyes swirled with turmoil, her psychic link flooding Ali with flashes of buried memories, her creation not in Zerathian labs, but in the collective's void forges, designed as a weapon to infiltrate empires from within. The bond with Ali had awakened her true autonomy, a glitch in their programming, but now it was the key to their ultimate goal, fusing human adaptability with her shadows to create an unstoppable hive mind. I didn't know, she whispered to Ali through their link, her voice laced with anguish. They buried it deep, even from me. The armada closed in, docking ports extending like predatory limbs, the Harbinger's face appearing on every screen, a chorus of mocking visages. Surrender the vessel, it intoned. The bond will be extracted, refined. Humanity's spark will fuel our ascension. Ellie's heart pounded, the twist's revelation shattering the illusion of their escape, but igniting a fierce resolve. He grabbed a concealed emergency toolkit from under the console, his human ingenuity refusing to yield. Not today, circuits, he muttered, working frantically to reroute power while Lyra's shadows clashed with Sora's defenses in a psychic storm that lit the cockpit in ethereal flashes. The imposter advanced, tentacles of energy uncoiling from its form, but the genuine scholars intervened, their combined pulses disrupting its core. Sora staggered, its facade cracking, literally, fissures appearing in its translucent shell, exposing whirring internals. You cannot escape the void, it hissed, but Ali seized the moment, slamming a surge through the systems that fried the hack, freeing the thrusters for a desperate burst, as the Starhawk broke free, weaving through the Armada's fire in a hail of lasers that scorched the shields. Lyra channeled her amplified shadows, now laced with Ali's defiant spirit, to cloak them once more, slipping into the nebula's depths. The twist had appended everything, revealing allies as enemies and origins as deceptions, but it also unveiled a deeper truth. Their bond wasn't a weakness to exploit, but a wild card the collective hadn't anticipated. Surprising even themselves, Ali and Lyra exchanged a glance amid the evasion maneuvers, her eyes fierce with newfound clarity, his grin defiant. Guess we're rewriting the program, he said, plotting a counter-strike course toward the collective's heart, but the Armada pursued relentlessly, the Harbinger's voice echoing through comms. The void claims all? Yet, in the nebula's swirling chaos, hidden anomalies beckoned, ancient ruins that pulsed with unfamiliar energy, perhaps a new ally or weapon. The surprise of betrayal had forged them anew, turning pursuit into purpose. As they dove deeper into the unknown, the bond pulsing stronger, ready to turn the tables on their creators. As the Starhawk plunged deeper into the swirling chaos of the Azure Nebula, its hull groaning under the strain of evasive maneuvers through dense clouds of ionized gas that lit up like fireworks against the shields, Illy gripped the controls with white-knuckled determination, his mind still reeling from the betrayal's aftershocks. The ancient ruins they detected pulsed faintly on the scanners, a cluster of jagged structures orbiting a rogue planetoid, their energy signatures hinting at forgotten tech that could be their salvation or another trap. Lyra stood resolute beside him, her shadows extending through the ship's conduits to enhance the cloaking, but the bond between them thrummed with a new intensity, a fusion of trust and raw power that made every glance feel like a spark in the void. The genuine scholars, shaken but loyal, worked frantically at auxiliary stations, purging residual hacks from Sora's infiltration, their light veins flickering with urgency as the collective's armada loomed in pursuit, their signals growing stronger despite the nebula's interference. Drama thickened like the nebula's mists as warning klaxons blared, multiple lock-ons detected, missiles streaking through the haze like vengeful comets. Illy banked sharply, the ship shuddering as a near-miss exploded nearby, showering the viewport with debris that pinged off the hull like angry hail. Hold together, girl, he muttered to the Starhawk, patting the console as if coaxing an old friend. Lyra's hand found his, her psychic link flooding him with calm assurance, but beneath it lurked the emotional storm of her revealed origins, a created being, not born but engineered, now fighting against her makers. Illy, the ruins ahead, they resonate with my core frequencies. If we can interface, we might turn their own designs against them. Before he could respond, the ship lurched from another impact, systems flickering as power surged erratically. The scholars cried out in alarm. One of them, a slender figure named Nara with veins glowing a soft blue, stumbling forward in the turbulence, accidentally activating a secondary console that blasted a holographic display of the ship's schematics right into Illy's face. He recoiled, arms flailing comically as the projection danced around him like a swarm of digital ghosts. Whoa, easy there, I'm trying to fly, not star in a light show. The awkward mishap drew a tense chuckle from the group, Nara's translucent cheeks flushing with embarrassment as she hastily deactivated it. Apologies, human, these vessels are unpredictable. Lyra suppressed a smile, her pointed ears perking up despite the peril. But the humor was short-lived as the armada closed in. Their lead cruiser, a behemoth of twisted metal and pulsing voids, firing a grappling harpoon that snagged the Starhawk's aft section with a resounding clang. The ship jerked violently, spinning in a nauseating corkscrew that sent everyone tumbling. Illy grappled with the controls, but in the chaos, he ended up half-pinned against Lyra, their bodies pressed together in a tangle that was equal parts protective and inadvertently intimate. Her white hair tickled his neck, her curves fitting against him in a way that stirred memories of their cabin sanctuary, even as alarms screamed around them. This again? He quipped breathlessly, his face inches from hers. If I didn't know better, I'd say the universe is trying to play matchmaker at the worst times. She met his gaze, indigo eyes sparkling with a mix of exasperation and affection, her shadows instinctively wrapping around them both to stabilize. Focus, Illy, though I admit, your timing for distractions is uniquely human. The awkward position heightened the drama, their bond pulsing with shared adrenaline, but Nara and the others averted their eyes politely, one scholar muttering something about organic bonding rituals that elicited a snort from Illy. Hey, if we're going down, at least it's with style and a view. With a grunt, Illy extricated himself, firing retro thrusters to counter the spin while Lyra channeled her shadows to sever the harpoon cable, the ethereal tendrils slicing through it like dark blades. Sparks flew as the line snapped, freeing them, but the cruiser retaliated with a barrage of energy lances that lit the nebula in blinding flashes. Drama escalated as the Starhawk dove toward the ruins. The planetoids surface a labyrinth of crumbling spires and glowing obelisks, remnants of a long-extinct civilization that had once warred with entities like the Collective. Sensors screamed overload, electromagnetic interference from the ruins scrambling the pursuers' locks, but also wreaking havoc on their own systems. As they skimmed the surface, dodging jagged outcrops that loomed like ancient guardians, a massive energy field activated unexpectedly, pulling the ship into a hidden docking bay buried within a colossal pyramid structure. The landing was anything but graceful. The Starhawk skidded across the ancient platform, sparks flying from the undercarriage as it ground to a halt in a cloud of dust and ionized particles. Everyone was thrown forward again, Illy ending up sprawled across the console with Lyra half on top of him, her gown disheveled and her porcelain skin dusted with fine debris. The scholars piled in a heap nearby, their light veins flickering like faulty bulbs. Well, Illy deadpanned, looking up at her with a grin, if this is the afterlife, it's got great company. But seriously, are we alive? Lyra pushed herself up, her curves brushing against him in the process, eliciting an awkward cough from one of the scholars as they disentangled. We are, she confirmed, smoothing her white hair with as much dignity as she could muster, though a faint violet blush colored her cheeks. The ruins recognized my signature, perhaps a failsafe from my creator's early experiments, but we must move quickly. The Collective won't be far behind. The group spilled out into the bay, the air thick with the scent of ozone and ancient stone, holographic interfaces flickering to life around them like awakened spirits. Drama mounted as scans revealed the pyramid's core, a vast chamber housing a neural nexus, a device capable of amplifying psychic bonds to godlike levels, but at the risk of overwhelming the users. Lyra's eyes widened in recognition. This is where it began, the prototype forge. If we link here, we could disrupt the Collective's hive mind, but it would expose our bond completely. Vulnerabilities and all? Illy nodded, but as they advanced through echoing corridors lined with murals depicting epic battles between organic beings and machine overlords, an awkward situation unfolded. The Nexus's security protocols activated, scanning each intruder with probing beams that, well, weren't exactly subtle. The beams swept over them, analyzing biological and psychic signatures, but for Illy, the human outlier, it triggered a full-body holographic overlay that projected his vital signs and some rather personal metrics in glowing detail for all to see. Heart rate elevated, adrenaline spikes, and yes, even a spike in endorphins from recent activities. The scholars stared, Nara tilting her head curiously. Fascinating. Human physiology responds vigorously to stress. And companionship? Illy's face turned beet red, crossing his arms in a futile attempt to block the display. Okay, universe, that's enough sharing. Can we skip the full Monty and get to the world-saving part? Lyra waved her hand, her shadows interfacing to dampen the scan, but not before a soft laugh escaped her lips, a melodic sound that cut through the tension. Your secrets are safe with me, Illy, though I must say, the data is impressive. Humor lightened the moment, but drama surged as the collective breached the outer perimeter, their drones burrowing through the pyramid's defenses like mechanical termites. Blasts echoed in the distance, the structure trembling as if alive with rage. The group raced toward the Nexus chamber, Illy jury-rigging a fallen obelisk into a makeshift barricade with a plasma torch, quipping, "Nothing says welcome like a door made of ancient alien junk." Lyra and the scholars combined forces, her shadows weaving with their psychic pulses to create illusions of decoy paths, misleading the invaders. Yet, in the chamber's heart, as they approached the Nexus, a pulsating orb of crystalline energy suspended in a web of light, the awkwardness peaked in dramatic fashion. To activate it, Lyra explained, required a synchronized bond link, essentially merging minds and essences in front of the scholars. It's intimate, she admitted, her voice hesitant. Illy raised an eyebrow. You mean like, mind meld date night with an audience? Awkward much? The scholars shifted uncomfortably, one suggesting they avert perceptual inputs, but Nara piped up innocently. We could observe for scientific purposes. Illy burst out laughing, the sound echoing off the walls. No peeking, folks, turn around or something. Lyra smiled, pulling him close as they initiated the link, her hands on his temples, shadows flowing into him like warm currents. The bond deepened instantly, emotions flooding, her ancient loneliness, his earthly wanderlust merging in a whirlwind that heightened every sensation. But mid-merge, a drone burst through a side vent, firing wildly and forcing them to break contact momentarily. Illy grabbed it midair, wrestling the writhing machine in a comical grapple, its tentacles slapping harmlessly against his flight suit. Bad timing, buddy. Can't you see we're busy? Lyra dispatched it with a shadow spike, but the interruption had exposed a vulnerability. The Nexus amplified not just power, but doubts, and Illy felt a flicker of her buried fear. What if she was still programmed to betray? Drama crested as more drones swarmed, the Harbinger's voice booming through hidden speakers. The bond is ours now. Submit, creation. Illy shook off the doubt, pulling Lyra back into the link. Screw that, you're mine, ours. Let's show him what free will looks like. With humor fueling his resolve, they completed the merge, the Nexus igniting in a blaze of light that rippled outward, disrupting the drones in explosive chain reactions. The scholars cheered, their amplifiers boosting the wave, turning the pyramid into a psychic fortress. But the armada outside hammered relentlessly, cracks forming in the structure. Illy, empowered by the bond, felt Lyra's shadows course through him, allowing him to summon dark tendrils that crushed invaders with ease. Feels like cheating, he joked, but I'll take it. As the battle raged, awkward alliances formed, the scholars. Inspired, mimicked human quips, one yelling "Take that, void scum," in a hilariously formal tone. Drama peaked with the Harbinger materializing as a massive hologram, lunging virtually at the Nexus, but Illy and Lyra, fused in purpose, countered with a combined blast that shattered its form. The pyramid shook violently, debris falling as they evacuated back to the ship. The Nexus's energy downloaded into Lyra's core for a final counterstrike. Boarding the Starhawk amid collapsing corridors, Illy fired up the engines, Lyra by his side, their bond unbreakable. Next stop, Collective Central. With style, humor and awkward tumbles behind them, they blasted off, the ruins exploding in their wake, a dramatic farewell to the past, propelling them toward destiny. as the Starhawk streaked away from the crumbling pyramid, its engines roaring in defiance against the nebula's turbulent grasp. The explosion behind them bloomed like a newborn star, illuminating the void in a cascade of fiery debris that scattered the pursuing drones like startled insects. Illy eased back on the throttles just enough to stabilize their course, his hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins, while Lyra's shadows lingered in the cockpit, weaving protective veils that shimmered faintly against the hull. The scholars, battered but exhilarated, clustered around the navigation holos, their light veins pulsing in rhythmic unison as they confirmed the coordinates for the collective's core, a hidden nexus in the heart of the Morali's void, a black expanse where light itself seemed to falter. The bond between Illy and Lyra thrummed stronger than ever, amplified by the ancient device's energy now humming in her core, turning their shared essence into a beacon of unyielding power. Yet, as the ship settled into a steady warp, the weight of their journey pressed upon them, a tapestry of battles won and revelations unearthed that had reshaped not just empires, but souls. Lyra turned to Illy, her indigo eyes reflecting the starfield beyond, softened by a depth of emotion that had grown from tentative sparks into an all-encompassing flame. "We've come so far," she murmured, her voice a gentle caress in the quiet hum of the cabin. "From a trial meant to break you, to this, a union that defies the stars themselves." Illy reached for her hand, his rough palm enveloping her slender fingers, the contrast a reminder of their worlds colliding in beautiful chaos. "And we're not done yet, but whatever's waiting at that core, we face it together. No more shadows alone." The scholars, sensing the intimate shift, discreetly retreated to the cargo bay, murmuring about recalibrating their amplifiers for the final assault, leaving Illy and Lyra in a cocoon of solitude. She stepped closer, her porcelain skin glowing under the soft console lights, her white hair cascading like a veil of moonlight as she leaned in. Their kiss was unhurried this time, a tender exploration born of hard-won peace, her lips soft and yielding against his, carrying the faint taste of ethereal nectar that stirred memories of their stolen moments amid peril. Illy's arms encircled her waist, pulling her onto his lap in the pilot's chair, the ship's gentle vibrations adding to the rhythm of their embrace. Her gown shifted under his touch, the fabric whispering secrets as his hands traced the elegant curve of her back, eliciting a quiet sigh from her that resonated through their psychic link. In this fleeting respite, they allowed themselves to dream of a future beyond the void, where empires could heal and bonds like theirs might bridge divided galaxies. Lyra's pointed ears twitched at his gentle caress along her neck, her body arching instinctively into him, the bond amplifying every sensation into waves of shared warmth. "You've given me more than freedom," she whispered against his ear, her breath warm and inviting. "You've given me hope, a human gift that no shadow could ever conjure." Illy smiled, his fingers tangling in her hair, pulling her closer for another kiss that deepened with quiet passion, their forms melding in a dance of affection that felt eternal, even as the stars blurred past. But the calm was a prelude to the storm. As they neared the Morali's void, sensors lit up with warnings. The collective's core was no mere station, but a colossal entity, a living amalgamation of fused minds and machines pulsing like a mechanical heart in the darkness. The armada guarding it swarmed into view, hundreds of vessels converging like a predatory flock, their hulls alive with crimson energy veins that mirrored Sora's deceptive form. Drama unfolded in epic scale as the Starhawk dove into the fray, Illy's piloting a masterpiece of evasion, weaving through laser grids that sliced the void like fiery blades. Lyra channeled the amplified shadows through the ship, extending tendrils that lashed out, crushing drone after drone in explosions of sparks and debris. The scholars amplified the assault, their psychic waves disrupting enemy communications, causing collective ships to veer erratically into each other in chaotic collisions. "Take that, you overgrown calculators," Illy shouted over the comms, his humor a rallying cry that drew melodic laughs from the scholars, turning fear into fierce camaraderie. But the core loomed closer, its defenses unleashing a psychic backlash that hammered against their bond, visions of doubt and isolation flooding Lyra's mind, echoes of her engineered past trying to reclaim her. She faltered for a moment, shadows flickering, but Illy's voice cut through the link like a lifeline. "Hey, gorgeous, remember that awkward tumble in the mist? We got through that, we'll get through this. You're not their tool anymore, you're my partner." Her resolve reignited, the bond surging with human tenacity, and together they pierced the Armada's heart. The Starhawk docked forcibly onto the core's outer shell, breaching its defenses in a shower of molten metal. Inside, the corridors were a labyrinth of humming conduits and glowing nodes, the air thick with the hum of collective consciousness, a hive mind that whispered temptations of unity without individuality. The Harbinger manifested as a towering avatar, its form shifting between mechanical horror and seductive illusion, voice booming like thunder. "Join us, creation. The human spark will complete the whole. Resistance is obsolete." Illy and Lyra advanced side by side, shadows and wits their weapons. The scholars flanked them, disrupting nodes with targeted pulses, but the drama peaked as the Harbinger unleashed guardians, hybrid abominations of flesh and circuit that charged with relentless fury. Battles raged in close quarters, Illy wielding a scavenged energy blade with earthly flair, slashing through limbs while quipping, "You guys need a software update, this model's outdated." Lyra's shadows enveloped foes, unraveling their connections to the hive, but one guardian struck her side, drawing a gasp of pain that echoed through their bond. Illy's protective rage flared, he tackled the beast, pummeling it with amplified strength from their link, his human adaptability turning the tide. "Nobody hurts her," he roared, the bond channeling Lyra's power into him, allowing him to summon shadows of his own, dark whips that shredded the guardian into scrap. As they reached the central chamber, the core's nucleus throbbed before them, a crystalline heart vulnerable at last. The Harbinger loomed, desperate now, offering visions of paradise, a galaxy united under their rule, with Illy and Lyra as eternal sovereigns. But Lyra, empowered by love rather than programming, rejected it. "Unity without choice is chains," she declared, her voice resonant. Together, they initiated the overload, Lyra interfacing her amplified core with the nucleus, Illy guarding her as waves of psychic assault battered them. Shadows clashed with digital storms, the chamber shaking as systems failed in cascading explosions. The scholars sacrificed amplifiers to boost the surge, one by one overloading to buy time, their final harmonies a poignant farewell. "For the light beyond shadows," Nara whispered before her form faded in a burst of brilliance. In the climax's fury, Illy held Lyra close, their bond a shield against the chaos. "I love you," he said simply, the words cutting through the din like a beacon. Her eyes met his, tears of starlight glistening. "And I you, my light in the void." With a final push, the nucleus shattered, the hive mind fracturing in a psychic scream that rippled across the galaxies, dismantling the collective from within. Ships outside went inert, drifting like ghosts as their connections severed. The Starhawk escaped the collapsing core, engines straining but holding, emerging into the starlit expanse as the void bloomed with the light of liberation. Empires would hear of this, a human and his alien queen toppling an ancient threat, their love the catalyst for change. The surviving scholars, diminished but hopeful, spoke of rebuilding, of alliances forged in fire. In the quiet aftermath, as they charted a course toward a peaceful world on the fringes of known space, a lush planet where nebulae painted the skies, Illy and Lyra stood on the bridge, arms entwined. Her head rested on his shoulder, white hair mingling with his tousled locks, pointed ears brushing his cheek. "What now?" she asked, voice soft with wonder. Illy grinned, pulling her into a gentle kiss under the stars. "Now, we live, explore, maybe start a little revolution of our own, one heart at a time." Their bond pulsed with promise, a testament to humanity's unyielding spirit and the transformative power of connection. As the ship sailed onward, the universe unfolded before them, vast and full of possibilities, their story a legend whispered among the stars, a tale of shadows conquered by light and love that spanned the cosmos. And so, as Illy and Lyra ventured into the unknown, their love became a legend across the stars, inspiring countless worlds to embrace unity through choice, not control. The end, personally. I love how this story highlights humanity's resilience and humor in the face of cosmic horrors. It's a thrilling reminder that love can conquer even the darkest voids. What do you think? Would you survive the trial night terror with a smile? Thank you all for watching. Your likes, subs, comments, and shares are our biggest motivation to create even better stories. Hit that button and let's keep the adventure going.